Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Today our discussion is on inequality of earnings. Focus of today's discussion is on understanding the various measures of income inequalities. When we measure income inequality, this involves two primary concerns, namely, we are concerned about the level of income in the economy and the dispersion of income in the economy. Why we are concerned about the level of income? Because based on the level of income, it would determine the level of consumption of goods and services of people in the economy. This is important for us to know the level of purchasing power in the economy. And then we are also concerned about the dispersion or the distribution of income in the economy because it provides one's relative standing in the society, and therefore it guides us to understand whether we live in equitable society or not. When we use the distribution or dispersion of income, then we can subcategorize groups of people into the high income, middle income, and the low income. So this is also important, especially in economic planning or economic development, such as in addressing the issue of poverty or income gap in the economy. Remember, in previous discussion, I have discussed with you various terms, such as what is wage rate, what is earnings, what is income, what is compensation. So please refer to that. So here we say that earnings as part of overall income provide us on the following indication. Number one, it reflects the level of marginal productivity in the economy or of that individual. Number two, it also a reflection of investment in human capital. Earnings also a reflection of the level of training we have undertaken at our workplace. And then earnings also may vary based on migration activities. For example, footballer or soccer players, when they migrate to much better leagues, that form of migration would boost their earnings or income. And lastly, earnings also is a reflection of access to opportunities in life. For example, there is a circle of the high income groups of people. There is a circle of billionaires, circle of middle income group, circle of poor people. So depending on our earnings, we can get access to different types of groups, and that would open up different types of opportunities. In this slide, I will provide some example of the idea of income inequality. For example, if everyone had the same earnings, say $20,000 per year, there would be no dispersion of income in the economy. That means equal income distribution in the economy. On the other hand, if there were dispersions in the earnings, these dispersions could be relatively large or relatively small dispersion. If the average level of earnings were $20,000 per year, and virtually all people receive earnings very close to the average, the dispersion of earnings would be small. However, if the average were 20,000, but some made much more and some made much less, then we will see the dispersion of earnings would be large. And that can be shown in this table of distribution. On the vertical line, we measure the number of people receiving each earnings level, while on the horizontal line, we measure the earnings level in thousands. And if we have the case where people earn $20,000 per year, everyone is earning this level of income. Therefore, there is no dispersion in that case, and it is shown by this straight line. On the other hand, for distribution A, this is where we have a small dispersion in the economy. $20,000 per year is the mean or average income, and those who earn more than that is not far from the central tendency point here. And also the same for those who earn less than 20,000, they are not far from $20,000 per year. So therefore, for distribution A, we have a small dispersion in the economy. On the other hand, for distribution B, it shows a case of large distribution in the economy. Given the average earnings in the economy to be at $20,000, you can see that there are small group of people, for example, in this side of distribution, who earns more than 35,000 per year, only small proportion of people in the economy. And then to the left side, we have some groups of people who earn less than $5,000 per year in the economy. So in this case, we see there is a large dispersion between these two groups. We will see that formula after this. Before we get to that formula here, we want to understand various measures of inequality. So how to measure the distribution? We can use graph as we have seen earlier. The best way to capture the level of income inequality is to use various quantitative indicators of earnings. For example, we can use variance, and the following is the formula to calculate variance. It is the summation of the earnings of individuals in the economy minus the average earning in the economy squared, and then we divide by n, where n is the number of people in the population. Or sometimes we can take n to be the sample size. However, one problem with variance is that it tends to rise as earnings gets larger. Therefore, variance is a good measure if you are concerned about absolute dispersion rather than relative dispersion or distribution of earnings in the economy. An alternative to variance is to use the coefficients of variance or CV, and to calculate the coefficient of variance, this is the formula where we take the standard deviation and we divide by the mean. The advantage of using the coefficient of variance is that if all earnings were to double, the coefficient of variance would remain unchanged. And the most common measure of earnings inequality is to rank the populations by their level of earnings. And then we classify them into percentiles, to which a given level of earnings belongs or falls into. So the question here, how to create that ranking? Please ignore this small formula at the moment. We will come to that later. There are a few steps we need to do. The classification of earnings level into percentile will enable us to either compare the earnings levels associated with each given percentile or compare the share of total earnings received by each. So the idea of this percentile is, first, you need to have a sample of population's earnings. So you will collect data on that, and then with that data, you will sort them from the highest to the lowest. Then you will group them into percentile. From that percentile, then we can compare these groups based on the following. You can compare, for example, income received by the top and the bottom fifth of households in the population. Or another comparison is to compare, for example, between the 80th percentile to earnings at the 20th percentile. Okay, let's take this example. This is based on the case of Malaysian data, and the data is based on 2016 household income survey. I have taken this data where it involved about 23,536 observations or household in the economy, Malaysian in 2016. And then given the earnings of this household, then we rank them and identify the percentile. Here I will not teach you how to calculate the percentile. I hope you have learned in your statistical method course how to create percentile. So here we have the 10th percentile, the 20th percentile, 30th percentile, up until the 100th percentile. And based on this percentile, we can identify that those who earn 1,889.81 cents per month, this is already converted into monthly income. Those who earn 1,889.81 and below, they would fall in the 10th percentile. So for us, we are familiar with this concept of B40, M40. So the B40 is like this. So for the B40 example, we take this, the 40th percentile, we identify this earnings or income level to be the monthly income for the B40, where those who earn 3,948.50 and below, they fall in the category of B40. So this is the idea of percentile. Going back to this slide, for example, when we talk about comparing the 80th percentile with the 20th percentile, what do we do? At the moment, I just use this example. We find that those at the 80th percentile, they earn $80,561, and those who earn at the 20th percentile is at $21,361. We divide these two and we get this ratio. What this ratio tells us is that we can say that those at the 80th percentile earn 3.77 times more than those at the 20th percentile. That's how we read this comparison. However, this type of comparison, if you take, for example, you compare 80th percentile to the 20th percentile, it will not be very useful unless it is compared with some things such as the previous year information, because the figure by itself doesn't give much meaning. Let's see this example. This is based on the United States case. So you have various years here in this column. And then over here you have those who earns at the 80th percentile, and the following is those who earn at the 20th percentile. So what we see here, we calculate the ratio. In general, we find that the ratio over the years keeps rising, where those at 80th percentile in 1980, they earn 3.08 times more than those at the 20th percentile. And later, in 2011, those at the 80th percentile earns 3.77 than those in the 20th percentile. So this is one comparison that we can use. By the way, this example that I take is the earnings for men. The following down here is for women. And when we take this comparison, there are many types of comparison based on percentile. The following are very common we can use. For example, here, we take the 80th percentile and we compare with the 20th percentile. The second one here, we compare those at the top 20% of the income level with the median. The 50th percentile is the median. So we compare with the middle income or median income group. And the third example here is when we compare the 50th percentile with the 20th percentile. So what it tells here is that we can, if you have the rankings, you put them into percentile. Basically, you can pick whatever percentile level you like and you can do the comparison. For example, 90th to 10th, this is to compare the top 10% income with the bottom 10%. So 90 to 10 and so on here. So please note on this income inequality measure. Based on my percentile ranking earlier, this is based on Malaysian case, I have then computed the ratio here. Here I choose my own ratio and then I compare across ethnicity in Malaysia. We have to set here because the top information here, this is for the year 2009, and then the bottom table here is for the year 2016. So not just we can compare across ethnicity, but we can also compare them across time. I have another video discussing about the income inequality in Malaysia. Please check that video. To conclude, what we have done here is we try to understand various types of income measures, especially to understand how to measure income inequality. And we also have started by emphasizing on why it is so important for economists, for the government, for the policy makers, and for the citizen as a whole to understand the issue of income inequality. I think that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Wassalam.